Shalab, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Craig, for having me.
Shalab, for viewers new to the story, would you introduce Unicycive, please?
Absolutely. We are a clinical stage biotechnology company based out of Silicon Valley, California. We have 2 drugs in development. Our lead drug is a drug that helps patients, that has a potential to help patients who have high phosphate. High phosphate happens to patients who have chronic kidney disease, more specifically in chronic kidney disease stage 5, which is also called as end-stage renal disease, ESRD, or also simply known as patients who are on dialysis. So lead drug is Renazorb, which is expected to file for NDA approval this year and is for treatment of high phosphate. We have a second drug that is in clinical development. Currently, it's undergoing phase 1 clinical trial in the United Kingdom, and it is being evaluated for both acute as well as chronic kidney disease. Our entire company is focused on chronic kidney disease or kidney disease in general. The first drug focuses on chronic part. The second drug can work both in acute and chronic kidney disease. And last but not the least, Greg, just to give you a context, roughly 14% of the US population suffers from chronic kidney disease. It's a pretty big market opportunity, but more importantly, it affects a lot of people who don't even know that they have chronic kidney disease.
Could you be more specific about the size of that market opportunity, Shalab, both for the chronic and the acute problems?
Let's talk about chronic kidney disease first, because that's a drug, our lead drug addresses that, and specifically in chronic kidney disease, hyperphosphatemia market. So phosphate level is something that most of us don't really worry about it. If a kidney function is normal, phosphate is not a problem to be excreted or to be taken out from the body. But when the kidneys, which are filtering part of the body, do not work properly, they end up in having phosphate not being excreted. And it is not the phosphate that is an issue, Craig, we are trying to solve for. Phosphate combines with calcium and ends up causing people to die from heart attack because calcium and phosphate combination or product ends up in causing atherosclerosis, which is simple term for coronary artery disease, just the same way as a patient would experience thickening of arteries that you would see by having someone either having very high cholesterol or having a very bad diet, as in eating a steak, for example, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I give you that example just to make the point. The phosphate becomes an issue in patients with chronic kidney disease, and phosphate also causes bone problem. So going back to the market opportunity, hyperphosphatemia market in the global market is roughly $2.5 billion, $1.25 billion in the US, and $1.25 billion in rest parts of the world. The US market, $1.25 billion. There are other drugs on the market, and we can talk more specifically about what does our drug do, how does it address the unmet medical need.
Shalab, Unicycive has just completed a bioequivalence trial for Renazorb. Tell us about the results of that trial, and what are the next steps in commercialization?
Yes, Craig. So as you recall, this was the only clinical study that we needed to run in order to be able to file our NDA. The clinical results, the clinical trial results showed that our drug is similar to the competitor drug, which is another drug based out of lanthanum called fostranol. And in order for us to have met the bioequivalence study, we had to show that when our drug is given to healthy volunteers and we evaluate urinary phosphate level, it is similar to that what you would expect from fostranol, which is the competitor drug. And we achieved those results. In the back of those results, with a successful completion of BE study, we completed a financing, as you also are aware of it. And this allows us to be able to file our NDA in the next couple of weeks to a couple of months.
Shalab, we've been talking a lot about Renazorb so far. I want to turn quickly to your other drug in the pipeline, UNY494.
Absolutely. UNY494 is a drug which is works on mitochondria. Think about mitochondria as a part of the cell that an energy storage system or energy storage capacitor. So just like in your house, if you don't have electricity, none of your devices, iPhone or internet or television will work. Similarly, if the cells do not have mitochondria or not working proper mitochondria, they will have dysfunction. UNY494 stabilizes mitochondria. It addresses acute kidney injury and also chronic kidney disease. The differentiation between acute and chronic is somewhat artificial, if you will, because if we have a patient or a person who has kidney dysfunction for first 90 days, we call that acute kidney injury. but if it continues on for a much longer period of time, we call it chronic kidney disease. The second drug, UNCY, just started a clinical development program in the UK. We are running a phase 1 healthy volunteer study, and this way we can evaluate and see how the drug performs. We have a human biological data in terms of the pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamic, talking more in general terms. What it means, we are trying to see how the drug goes into the body and dissipates. There's a lot of clinical data from the drug as it relates to the UNCY is a pro-drug, but what it originally relieves is a drug called nicorandil. So there is a lot of data on nicorandil already available. We are super excited for this drug. It's taken a bit of time to get into clinic, but we start to see the clinical trial data in the next few days, and we expect to have phase 1 completed by end of this year.
Shalab, you mentioned already some of the key players on your team, such as Doug Dramasic. Give us an introduction of yourself as well as the other people that make Unicycive the great company that it is.
Thanks, Greg. So by way of background, I'm a physician, trained practice in New York with a decade of clinical training experience. I went to work on Wall Street as a sell-side analyst covering biotech companies like ours, and also covered pharma companies like Pfizer, Merck, Schering-Plough, and Lilly. I then went to work for Genentech and Corporate Strategy Group, and then moved on to form companies before starting Unicycive. My experience and background has been that a product in itself is not enough. You need three things for this to work. You need the support of investors who are committed to see their products and companies succeed. We have that. And number two, you need a commitment from the team that is single-minded and focused on execution. We have that. And number three, you have to have a great product. If you don't have a great product, then you struggle with having great team and investor, but you then have to go and find new products. The third part, which I mentioned to you, Renazorb was always a great product, but having spent last two plus years as a public company, we have now got to the point where we can file the drug for FDA approval.
All right, Shalab, we've covered a lot of ground here. To wrap up, put it in a nutshell for us. Why should an investor take an interest in Unicycive right now?
Craig, there are probably three reasons or three summary points that I would like to emphasize. Number one, we have a very late-stage drug. In drug development, people have drugs that are going through phase 1 trial, phase 2 trial. We have a very late-stage drug which has no clinical risk at the moment. We are in the process of regulatory filing. The clinical trials were completed end of last year, as I mentioned earlier. So number one, there is a drug which is in very, very late stage in clinical development. We are about to file the process with FDA, NDA filing. The NDA filing takes us for approval, potential approval next year. So that's number one. Number two, in the current economy, or for that matter, any economy, for a small company, the challenge is that investors feel that the company did very well in terms of clinical program, but then there is a challenge about capital markets. We have no financing risk or limited financing risk because we have already commitment for another $100 million. As we achieve milestones, that money comes in, and that's number two part. Number three part, most companies are single product companies, single product focused company, and the entire value of the company relies on one drug. And that perhaps is true in some way because even though we have the second drug, that has not seen much of airtime. Our entire focus from an investor's point of view has been the first drug. But I'll just reiterate, the second drug is now in clinic. We are focused on developing our second drug, and the second drug is pretty exciting because it addresses a problem that currently there is no approved treatment, and that problem or that indication is acute kidney injury. Would love to talk more about it, and by the time Renazorb goes for FDA approval, the second drug starts to go into the end of phase 1, and next year it will be in phase 2 trials. So those are the 3 points that I would like to summarize. Great product in a very big market opportunity with very limited risk for approval, well-financed company, and number three, a company that has got 2 exciting products, not just one.
Shalab, that is very exciting. Unicycive is a well-financed company aspiring to reduce the pill burden. Thank you for sharing your story with us today.
My pleasure, Greg. My pleasure.